minutes. Ms Roddick.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I first want to say that I genuinely enjoyed taking part in this inquiry. It felt like proper scrutiny work. We had really tricky bits of contradictory evidence given to us. We were asking questions that we didn't know the answers to. And throughout the process, I changed my mind a few times, going back and forth with colleagues from different parties. So I do want to say a huge thank you to my committee colleagues, to the clerks, Spice and everyone who came forward with evidence for us. On to the less positive bit. I am a huge fan of Scottish salmon. It's delicious. I love it with scrambled eggs, and I've questioned a lot during this inquiry how much damage my enjoyment of salmon has done. And I don't want that to be the case. I want this industry and this product to be one that Scotland can be proud of, that I have confidence in and can tell others is an ethical purchase. Looking at the issues, the mortality rates of farmed salmon are of great concern to me, and it's particularly frustrating that many different types of death don't have to be reported. The Coastal Communities Network highlighted in evidence that the current Fish Health Inspectorate data excludes all deaths below the weekly thresholds of 1.5 or 1% of salmon in each farm, depending on their weight. Any smolts that die in their first 6 weeks at sea, as so many die when they're first put into saltwater, and mortality in the earlier freshwater stage, during which more than 30% of fish often die before the survivors are put out to sea. So thanks to that, I could not say with confidence at any stage in the inquiry that I actually have a full understanding of the true scale of deaths in the salmon farming industry. And it's all very well to point to the quantity of data available, but I'm far more concerned about the quality of data, because I was frustrated by it. Many who gave evidence were frustrated too, and it's a complaint of many constituents who have reached out because they've been unable to pin down the true impact of nearby farms. We did discuss in detail that much of the drivers of salmon mortality are not within the control of farmers. They can't reasonably predict or prevent climate change, extreme weather, jellyfish and algal blooms, but that doesn't change the number of dead fish on the farms. The stark difference in average mortality between Shetland and Argyll farms and the difference in risk of interactions with wild salmon between these areas also suggests to me that some places are just more suited to hosting salmon farms, and I hope that progress on marine planning in future might give greater clarity both to the industry and affected communities. I'll take an intervention.
Edward Mountain.
And I thank the member for taking an intervention, and I apologise I can't remember the number of the recommendation in the REC Committee report. But one of the recommendations was that salmon farms should move further offshore, so there was greater churn in the sea and a chance for temperatures to be kept lower and less likely to attract some of the pests and jellyfish that are attracted inshore. Doesn't seem to have happened. Does the member think that that would be a useful way of reducing mortality on salmon farms around Scotland?
Emma Roddick, I can give you the time back.
I think there is disagreement on offshore, onshore, the distance that's best suited for salmon farms, but certainly overall there needs to be more thought put into the space in marine areas and how we use them. And I think that it's very clear some places are already warmer than others, and given climate change we should be really thinking about the best place to be placing salmon farms. Our welfare standards for salmon, despite pressing people on both sides of the debate, it was very difficult to come to conclusions about what a happy fish looks and acts like. Before visiting the farms, I did speak to animal welfare campaigners and I asked them what to look out for. But it wasn't really possible for MSPs visiting to know what the experience of the fish was just by standing at the side of the pen. Now, I enjoyed feeding the salmon and watching them leap, but I could not tell you what their welfare standard was. And pinned up on the wall in the barge on the Dunstaffridge farm was the welfare standards for farmed animals. And those familiar will know that much of these are not relevant to fish, and it was painfully clear that there's just not a consensus on fish welfare. Professor Lynn Snedden's evidence on the pain and distress of salmon subjected to various lice treatments in particular was very helpful, and I would highlight her comments to the Scottish Government as a great place to start if we are looking at creating welfare standards, which I sincerely believe that we should, and I look forward to further information on that in the next year. My understanding of the treatment of cleaner fish on salmon farms suggests an even graver situation, and data and welfare standards for those fish are desperately needed. That concerns were raised about the impact of salmon farming on wild wrasse populations is also deeply worrying. Now, it's never easy to go against the grain, and I did feel a lot of pressure to just say, let them get on with it. This is an industry that brings in money and jobs, and we have to let them keep on growing without question. But we don't, and the industry should be as sustainable as it is possible for it to be. And I felt strongly more and more as the inquiry went on that there was justification for a pause in expansion until issues around mortality, welfare, use of cleaner fish and other lice treatments were sorted out. And by the end, I felt that doing any less would be irresponsible, both for the animals that we're discussing and for the industry itself, which is why, after debating every detail of the recommendations running up to it, I couldn't put my name to that final section of the report which stated the committee did not feel a moratorium was justified. I hope that I'm wrong, and I hope that I'll come back with the committee next year astounded by the positive progress that's been made, and I'll be happy to have a red face, and I'll approach any new evidence next year with an open mind. But I agree with Edward Mountain on the Salmon Scotland letter responding to the inquiry. The tone was one of indignation and even offence at being scrutinised at all, and that really highlighted to me that this is not an industry which is going to change practices unless it is forced. I hope that colleagues can hear that I've given this a lot of thought, and I appreciate there's great disagreement on many of the points that I've outlined. But I can hand on heart say that I feel there needs to be more urgency from government, regulators and industry to get things up to scratch. I want to get behind Scottish Food and Drink. I do not want to have hesitations. There are strong recommendations in the committee's report, and I hope that they serve as a catalyst for progress, not that another committee meets in another 5 years, confused about how few have been heeded. Thank you.